third meeting of the House Local Government Committee. We do have folks in the room who will be testifying on several bills. We've also got folks on Zoom. If we have any members of the committee that are on Zoom, please let us know that you are in your annex office when the roll call comes around. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Bentley?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Bray?
Yes.
Representative Brown? Representative Carney? Representative Dixon?
In the room, present.
Representative Donahue?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Fleming?
Present.
Representative Frazier?
Present in the room.
Representative Huff? Representative Imes?
Present.
Representative Johnson?
Present in the room.
Representative Koenig? Here. Representative Lockett?
Here.
Representative Marzian?
Here in my office, annex.
Representative Meeks? Representative Miller?
Here in the room.
Representative Reed?
Here in the room.
Representative Roberts?
Here in the room.
Representative Thomas?
Present in the room.
Representative Meredith?
Here. We do have a quorum and are duly constituted to do business. First bill that we will call on the agenda today is House Bill 120. Representative Massey, if you and those who are going to be testifying with you would come to the table, introduce yourselves for the record, and then you can move forward with your testimony.
Thank you, members of the committee and Chair Meredith. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and thank you for giving us the courtesy of calling this bill first. I have to leave momentarily to go chair Judiciary. I have with me my colleague Sal Santoro, Representative Santoro, as well as Judge Executive Gary Moore from Boone County, also the National Association of Counties president this year. And we are bringing to you this House Bill 120, which was born about 3 years ago. It's gone through the process for the last couple of years with a lot of changes. The idea behind this bill, simply put, is to allow fire districts and fire departments to consolidate and to provide better service and coverage to their local constituency, their local citizenry. And so there's been a lot of information shared. I know that Judge Executive Moore has talked with the International Association of Firefighters. I don't think that's me.
We got a hot mic somewhere.
It looks like you.
All right.
Committee members, please turn your mics off if you happen to have them on.
And I at one time in my life actually served as a firefighter EMT in Florence, Kentucky, and I can tell you that the service that's given in Florence is different than the service that's given in Petersburg or some of the smaller communities surrounding the area. And the idea behind this is to allow them to consolidate. This is not mandatory. It is voluntary. And there are certain implications that go along with that. So that is the very quick overview of the bill. I'm going to turn it over at this point to the people that really have been down in the weeds dealing with this, which is Judge Executive Moore, as well as Chief Barlow, who will come up and take the seat that I'm sitting in. And again, Representative Santoro, this was my initiation into the General Assembly, was at the first meeting in Northern Kentucky after I was elected. They said, hey, this looks like a good bill for you to carry. And therein this was born. But it was a much bigger lift than I anticipated, and something that we've talked about with many committee members. I know that even in past years, I've talked with Representative Wheatley about this, talked with Representative Rothenberger about this, who was part of this body a year ago. And so we think that we've got it to a place now that it will be beneficial to the citizens of the Commonwealth and allow us to do or perform better coverage for emergency and medical services. So with that, Chief Barlow, if you want to come up, and I'll turn it over to Gary Moore.
We do have a committee substitute that needs to be
Motion
adopted.
on the committee sub.
Got a motion from Representative Reed, a second from Representative.
Just, Mr. Chairman, you just want us to give our names and who we are. Representative Sal Santoro, Boone County, District 60.
Gary Moore, Boone County Judge Executive. Gary Moore, Boone County Judge Executive.
And Jeff Barlow, Fire Chief of the Burlington Fire Protection District in Boone County.
Well, thank you. We greatly appreciate this opportunity today. As it's already been said, this has been a several-year process. For those of you that were in Northern Kentucky in the summer of 2019, pre-COVID, in our county courthouse in Burlington, we talked about this issue. I'm here at the request of our fire districts and our fire chiefs. This is their work. This isn't a top-down effort to merge. The fire services are 9 different fire districts in Boone County. And I'll say that again. These are 9 Chapter 75 taxing fire districts in one county. Did a study that lasted for about a year, and their recommendation is for those that wish to merge to be able to, but to do this in a more responsible way than the current Chapter 75 merger allows. So this new chapter, Chapter 75A, would give them the ability to do many of the things that their study and the work that Chief Barlow and his other chiefs came up with. We have, through these 3 years, we've checked a lot of boxes. We've talked to county clerks about their concern about the election of fire district representatives. We've talked to the Sheriff's Association as late as this morning about the issues that might impact the sheriffs. We've talked with the Kentucky League of Cities, Kentucky Association of Counties, and many others. And we believe, for the most part, that we've addressed the concerns that are out there. It is a good bill. It allows a new tool in the toolbox for those that wish to use it. No one would be forced to do anything that they don't wish to do, and it would take us from there. I'm going to save time for your questions and answers and turn it over to Chief Barlow, the fire chief of the Burlington Fire District.
Chief, just a second before you get started. We do have a motion and second on the sub. We do need to have a vote on the sub. All those in favor of the sub say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The sub is before us, and Chief, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the time to present to you this morning. I'll keep it very brief because Judge Moore basically said in a nutshell everything that I could have told you. I can tell you that I was one of the original researchers when our county association came together in 2017, and we said we really need to look at how we solve the problems moving into the future. Hard to believe that that's been 4 years ago because the future is now upon us. But some of the concerns we had was recruiting and retention, staffing, trying to accommodate the service levels that each of our districts are trying to provide independently, and recognizing that as growth occurs, they don't care where a boundary may be. The problem also became very evident. Current Chapter 75 does allow for consolidations, and some of you may ask, why not just use that existing tool in the toolbox? The problem is if you have a have-not and a have-not and put them together, you just have a lot bigger have-not. We have departments that have maxed out their tax rate and has been for years. They are doing everything they can to provide efficient service. They're doing an excellent job. But the reality is the revenues that come in are just not enough to provide the staffing that they need or the equipment that they need. So then they start looking at, well, what neighbors can we potentially combine with? The problem is there's no additional revenue available. When they've already maxed out, they're not bringing anything other than liability to the equation. So we said we need to find some way to allow a consolidation that would enhance a revenue stream to continue to provide the services necessary. At the end of the day, this is all about service. We're just trying to figure out how can we best serve our local community and do it in such a way that it is not thrust upon anyone, that every individual existing entity has an opportunity to evaluate their situation and make the decision, do we want to do this or not? But at least if we go into it, it does allow some revenue enhancement that can provide the funds necessary to actually provide the services needed. This, as has been mentioned from the very beginning, was born out of a significant study. This is not a small work. It took a year to put together, and we have continued to enhance it over the time to make sure that it is responsive to all stakeholders and that it is voluntary for the local community to make that decision. But what I come before you to ask is, please consider approving this tool to be placed in the toolbox to let the local jurisdiction say, if this works for us, we can opt to get into it. The question I get a lot is, well, how many districts are in favor of this? The short answer is, no one's talking about it because everybody knows we can't get off the starting block. There's no legislation available other than existing Chapter 75 consolidation. That just won't work. So I would humbly ask you to support the bill. We think that it has checked a lot of the boxes of concerns of various stakeholders, and we do believe that this will allow us to move into the future to provide service not just for Boone County, but ultimately have ripple effects across the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Motion on House Bill 120 as amended by the committee sub.
I have a motion, Representative Johnson. Representative Reed, you want to make a second to that? Second, Representative Reed. We do have someone who would like to testify, I think, in opposition to the bill. Brian O'Neill, if you'll come forward and give your comments, and then if there's any questions, we'll bring those forward.
Thank you, sir. I think I turned it off. Thank you, sir. Yes, my name is Brian O'Neill. I am the Legislative Director for the Kentucky Professional Firefighters. We are here to speak against this bill. We're not opposed to the idea of merger. It's, as they mentioned, the possibility to merge already exists. This is something that can be done, but we understand that this is a way to seek out new revenue and increases in that way. It's a good intentioned bill. I don't think that there's anything nefarious going on here. However, it leaves a lot of room for a lot of bad consequences to happen that are perhaps unintended, or even for somebody that's a bad actor to come in and take advantage of these holes that are left in this legislation. Of course, this is not just a Boone County bill. The Boone County study, that best study, is where this came from, but this applies to everywhere in the Commonwealth. So certainly taxpayers and business owners throughout, whether you are in Ashland, Richmond, Murray, Hopkinsville, throughout the Commonwealth, you need to be concerned about what this bill can do. It mentions Chapter 75s, but if you read into the bill, this also affects Chapter 273 volunteer fire departments, as well as Chapter 95 city fire departments. So cities of the second and third class currently are required to provide a fire department, but this bill would allow those cities to, if they decided that they didn't want to be in the public safety game anymore, they could create one of these consolidations and basically annex out and give away their fire protection and their responsibility for fire protection to this Consolidated Emergency Service and that newly formed board. Now, what does that do for the business owners that came to that city, understanding that it was going to be a city fire department, city public protection, as well as the civilians that live there, and for the employees that live there that were hired under a civil service process that no longer have the protections of that civil service board and the Chapter 95 protections, and now they're under Chapter 75A. There are many references in this bill to the county government where the district is located, and also to the county judge executive as the ultimate authority. However, lots of fire protection districts cross county lines, and this bill does not address how that would be dealt with if there is an issue that has to come. Which county judge exec does it go to? Also, there are no guarantees about the level of coverage that would be provided to the citizens, to the communities, to those businesses if this were to happen. I understand the idea, and again, I think it's well-intentioned when you talk about consolidation, but usually consolidation means a reduction in safety and a reduction in service. There are also no guarantees for the employees. There's no guarantee that when this merger happens that they will even maintain their job, let alone maintain their salary, their rank, their seniority, etc. The questions come up. This is just a lot of what ifs, and we're going to throw a lot of what ifs at this, and we need to get the ball rolling. We need this tool in the toolbox. I understand that. I respect that. However, what ifs that's what we do as firefighters. Many of you may have seen the rather fantastic explosion that happened in Texas. It was about 18 hours ago. This is not something that we look at and we just start heading there and figure it out as we go along. No, we have a plan for that. And that's an incident that might maybe happen once in a 25-year career. But we have a plan for that. And what the holes that are left in this, we don't have plans for that in place, and I think it's wrong to just start down this road and then hopefully figure out those problems as we get to them. I'd also want to mention, in addition to the Kentucky Professional Firefighters being opposed, the KFA is not here. They are actually neutral on this bill, but I spoke with them last night and this morning, and they too were under the understanding that there were going to be further meetings to kind of deal with some of these issues and problems, but that meeting never happened, so they're just kind of left out in the dark as well. But I thank you for your time, and obviously I would field any questions that anybody has.
Anybody on the Representative Roberts?
Thank you. I think these questions may be directed towards the sponsors and the judge more so give you all time to move around. And Mr. Chair, I have a couple questions, if I may.
Good.
Thank you. You all mentioned that this was needed because some districts carry debt and it's hard for them to consolidate under the current situation. So my question is, what happens to the debt under this bill if there are agencies that are finding themselves in that place and do want to consolidate?
I'll start and then let Chief Barlow take it more from the district point of view. But we've talked about this during the process, and I think the lending entity, whether it's a bond or a bank financing, they're going to, of course, make sure that that debt is satisfied and that no one would walk away from it. I want to make clear that these mergers, no one's going out of business. So that entity would still be responsible for the debt and it would be taken care of. We think that those things would be negotiated through the merger agreement. If that debt's on a firehouse, the new combined entity is going to need that firehouse. So there's probably a situation where you would work through the logistics of how that arrangement would work. But Chief, you want to pick it up from there?
I believe, and to answer the question, yes, those specifics have to be worked out entity to entity. Once the tool is available and the entities want to have the discussion, that has to be agreeable to all parties involved, and that the debt is not going to be relieved. It has to be accommodated. That debt will carry forward. If I'm not mistaken, even in the bill, it does make reference to sub-districts that would continue to fulfill that indebtedness to make sure that somebody else's debt doesn't get brought to the table and another jurisdiction is ultimately paying it off, you might say. So we know that that's a very real issue. The difficulty here is this is the classic which came first, chicken or egg, because some of these very specific discussions that need to occur, whether that be about debt, whether that be about staffing or positions or pay, no one can talk about it because of the fact that there's no way to do this right now, other than, as mentioned before, a Chapter 75 district forming another Chapter 75. So what we've asked for is that tool allows those conversations to take place. The one thing I can tell you is, obviously, with the study, and that study was 2 years ago. It was published in 2018. Many on this committee had copies provided to them, at least the local jurisdictions. This is all about transparency. This is all about laying everything on the table up front. Facts are facts, and then discussing those facts to figure out how do we solve the problems? How do we make sure that there's not a single person that loses a job? This is not about job loss. This is actually about we can't get the jobs filled fast enough now. We need more people, and the people in the pipeline are still in process of training. That's a problem for us, and we don't have the volunteer pool that we used to, much like across the Commonwealth and across the country, which means you have to do more upfront training. We don't have the ability as independent districts to do that kind of preparation on our own. But if we do it together, it requires entities to try and have agreements on how this will work, and those discussions have not been fruitful in the past.
If I may add to that, if it's not a good deal, nothing requires that other district to take them. That's part of the merger negotiation. And I would add that just like the current 75 merger, if 2 or more districts vote to merge, it has to go to the governing body. So either the consolidated local government, the urban county government, or the fiscal court to approve it after the districts have voted to merge. So you'd have that elected body oversight as well. And I think we failed to point out the taxing authority on these merged under a 75A, anything above compensating rate has to be approved by the elected body, the consolidated government, the urban government, or the fiscal court. That doesn't exist today in 75. So I know many of you feel strongly that there needs to be more elected official oversight of tax rates. This brings this to this topic for the first time.
Thank you. Next question. Judge, that's a good segue into my next question, which is, first of all, thank you all. I appreciate the work that you've done on this. I do have grave concerns about this bill, and my next question for you addresses one of those. I worry that this will lead to a consolidation of services that leads to a reduction in services, possibly even an increase in homeowners insurance for people. And the way I read this bill, it does allow for a raise of taxes, even though it may lead to a reduction of services. Is that correct?
I don't know of any Chapter 75 board or fiscal court that would vote to do something that would reduce fire service to its constituents. I know we would not, and I know that our fire chiefs and our firefighters in Boone County would not stand for that, as well as our citizens. What it does do, I believe, is increase ISO ratings by having fire apparatus and firehouses positioned in a way that they are more adequately able to respond to 911 calls, to demands for service. And I think it's actually going to increase home values. I think it will decrease their homeowners insurance through improved ISO ratings and other efficiencies. So this is about efficiencies. This is about improving what we have now, not taking away from it. We would never do that.
And I can speak to the issue, the whole concept of the potential of going beyond the existing 20 cent per 100 cap. It takes money to provide service. We have departments, and I can speak for Boone County, we have a number of departments that are at the maximum cap, and they have been for some time, and they still can't provide the level of service that they want to provide. They can have the rolling stock, they can put part-time people in the building as long as they're able to make it, but there are times that there's no one in the firehouse. And when that happens, the cascade effect is the neighboring jurisdictions get called, which we are glad to respond. That's not the issue. But when that happens, we are reacting to the 911 call. As Mr. O'Neill pointed out, we have to have plans. And this is all about trying to put together a coordinated plan for the future that says we can't just rely on the 911 call saying, well, we'll send you a fire truck or an ambulance or a whole crew. But it meant we just stripped an entire 30, 40, 50 square miles of their resources. We need more resources, not less. This is not about consolidating to reduce. This is about trying to find ways to actually provide the service that is necessary. And right now, the funding that's available, even when maximized, is just not enough to do that. And that's what really drove this out of Boone County was we recognize it's not just one, there's 2 or 3 departments that are really, really struggling. And I will be very fast to say, this is through no fault of their own. This is not mismanagement. This is not inappropriate spending. This is about there's only so much money to go around. And when you get done paying the bills, that's all that's left. We're trying to fix that. I'm a department that when those neighbors have a problem, my department's going. And we're glad to go, but it also means I just reduced my department's staffing capability. That's the concern that we're trying to fix.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Koenig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, how many districts are there in Boone County?
There are currently 9 independent taxing Chapter 75 districts.
Judge Moore and I were both elected to county government in 1998. How much has Boone County grown since then?
Well, we were 84,000 people, and today we're close to 140,000 people.
And what are the estimates going forward for growth?
200,000 by 2035.
The locations of the firehouses today, are they optimum for not only the way things are today, but where you're going to go in the future?
What we have had some really exciting discussions about is if we could take those lines that exist today that have been there for many decades and plan our fire and emergency service. And this isn't just fire, this is ambulance, EMS, other services. If we could plan our county based on where it is today and where we're going with our GIS mapping, with all the other tools we have, and allocate our resources, which the chief just said very well, are so limited, and we want to find efficiencies. But if we could position firehouses and the apparatus where it needs to be based on today and future, it would be so much more effective and efficient, and it would be a win-win for the citizens, and it would be a win for our firefighters because we'd have a more professional, well-managed system than we do today.
And I would concur with that. I can give you a quick anecdotal story. When we had our ISO review a number of years ago, one of the things that the ISO evaluator told us is he said, you need more stations. And I looked at him and I said, I can't afford more stations. He said, well, your population density is all to the east and you really need to have a station over there because of the population density. I said, right now our station is somewhat centralized. I'm about 5 miles in all directions to cover our district. If I move to where the population density is, it means I take all of my rural constituents on the west and the south side of the district and I'm going to move the firehouse another mile away from them? That's not right. That's not. So therefore, I have to leave it where it is. The problem is we know that if you go beyond just my district line, there's other departments out there that are trying to do the same thing in those more rural areas. And of all the growth that is happening in our county, it's not happening in those rural areas, which means they're not seeing this windfall of growth revenue. They're holding their own, but it's not affecting their operation. But then it relies upon neighboring districts that do receive money. Okay, well, you're going to help continue to provide service for your neighbors. This is where the crux of the matter was, if we looked at it from a bigger lens, if we stopped trying to look at individual little silos of how can I help you in your crisis, but then go back to my home, we would do a lot better for the community, and we would do a lot better for even preparing our own firefighters for the tasks that they're asked to do. I've got a station with 8 bays. I've got 7 people on duty at any given time. Those 7 people are trying to staff 2 ambulances, 2 pumpers, a ladder truck, a tanker, and a brush truck. They get on whatever has to go. Many times, a critical EMS call is going to get a fire engine with at least 3 people and an ambulance with 2. You can do the math. That's 5 people out the door on an EMS run. That leaves me 2 on a good day to provide service for 38 square miles. And that does not count my neighbors that might need us to respond to them. We have to do something different. And I can tell you from Burlington's perspective, we're at 17 cents a hundred. We have a little bit of wiggle room. But I can tell you my board's not exactly crazy about, well, let's bump our tax rate up because we have room so that we can fund other people's issues. That's not a good answer. So we have to look at it differently, and we think that this is a good tool to do that.
And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I want to make clear, raising taxes is the last resort. What we want to do is create entities here that find the efficiencies and maximize our resources to where we don't have to do that. And I can tell you in the Boone County Fiscal Court arena, it's very, very conservative. Our property tax rate is lower than when I took office 22 years ago, and we are proud of that, our real estate rate. And we have to be strongly convinced before we would ever allow a tax increase. So the first thing we'll do in these merged entities is demand efficiency and demand performance. Efficiency not at the cost of the level of service, but efficiency for the good of the residents and the good of the fire department. So we think it's a good bill. We think it'll do great things, and maybe we can be an example that other counties would want to follow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Got 2 more questions real quick, and I'm going to ask that everybody be as short as possible on the question and answer for both of these because we've got to move on to some other stuff. But Representative Bentley, you've got a question?
Yes, sir, and a comment.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here in the last couple of weeks in Boyd County, Kentucky, we had 18,000 people without electric. We didn't have enough personnel. So is this bill a stakeholder or a stateholder bill? You said stakeholders a minute ago, but I think it's more a stateholder bill because the whole state will be involved with it. And you were speaking for rural Kentucky a minute ago. Is there anyone here to speak for rural Kentucky?
Is not respectful of the things that lead people not to report and to live with trauma, which is.
I'm not sure, stakeholder, I'm not sure
No,
following the question.
you were talking about all stakeholders have been involved. But I want to know if the whole state's been involved by that terminology.
No, sir. This has been born out of Boone County. This was a grassroots effort that in 2017, all of the fire chiefs, we have a monthly fire chiefs meeting, all of the fire chiefs agreed we needed to do the research. I was one of 3 that started that research. When I referenced the rural communities, I was referring to the rural communities of Boone County. They have been at the table. We have some that neighbor our jurisdiction. We have very close communications and a very good relationship.
But if the bill would pass, it would involve the whole state, right?
Only if a fire district voted to merge and then that fiscal court approved it. But it's a voluntary type legislation. No one would be forced to do anything or change.
You know, after riding with these guys for the last 2 weeks, I have to represent them.
Yes, sir.
And I think we ought to have the whole state involved with this before we tighten it up a little bit. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If I may expand on the word rural in our case, we have a fire district that has, I think Bellevue has maybe 2 or 3 fire hydrants in the whole district. It's a rural part of Boone County without public water. They have one paid employee, and that is a chief. They operate solely on volunteers, and their budget is very, very small. And so when Chief Barlow was referencing supporting the rurals, that's what he was referencing, because we have some very rural agricultural areas of Boone County, and that's what we were responding for. I have spoken to other county judges and to others around the Commonwealth through this work, and we have presented it at CAECO, and this bill is supported by CAECO and by the other county judges. I've not had one oppose it. Yes, sir.
Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be quick. Is there any effect at all with the ambulance services? Is this totally separate?
This would affect ambulance services for fire districts that already provide ambulance
And
service.
do y'all provide those? Okay.
Yes. In Boone County, they all are
In
fire
about
EMS.
3 or 4 sentences, can you give me a description of the 5-year look-back clause and how it might affect down the road?
Yes, I can respond to that. In doing our due diligence, we had a phone call with some of the fire districts in Jefferson County. And in a situation, I think you've had St. Matthews and Linden merge in Jefferson County in the last several years. I think there are some districts that have done this in the past that would like to have a look back, so that if this tool became available and it worked for them, they might want to move to a 75A model. So it was at their request that we added this to the language.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we do have a motion and a second on the bill as amended by the committee substitute. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Bentley?
In representing these rural firefighters and seeing what they've done the last couple of weeks, they've given their lives and blood and everything. I'll pass till we get more information on rural firefighters. Thank you.
Representative Bray?
Yes.
Representative Brown? Representative Dixon?
Yes.
Representative Donahue?
No, ma'am.
Representative Fleming?
Explain my vote.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Real quick, I'm going to pass for right now. And the reason I have passing is I need to get a little more information on how, and I appreciate your explanation on the 5-year, particularly on Jefferson County. I've got a district that covers not only Oldham but also Jefferson, and we're going through some logistics in terms of trying to deal with this. I said certain situations come up, so I'm going to pass right now. I'm not going to say I'm not going to vote no on it, but I'm going to join Representative Bentley to do a little more information on it. But thank you.
Representative Frazier?
Yes, but I will get more information.
Representative Huff?
Yes.
Representative Imes?
Yes.
Representative Johnson?
Yes.
Representative Koenig?
Yes.
Representative Lockett?
Yes.
Representative Marzin?
No.
Representative Miller?
Yes.
Representative Reed?
Yes.
Representative Roberts?
Explain my vote. I'm a no. I'm not opposed to consolidating. I understand the need for it. I have a consolidated district within my own district. And we have a mechanism for it, which I'm grateful for. My concerns here are that this is a fix for one county out of 120 counties that could greatly harm others, and that it could raise taxes, reduce services, and harm employees. And we're not talking just any employees here. We're talking about our frontline heroes. So at this time, I'm a no.
Representative Thomas?
Aye.
Representative Meredith?
Yes. House Bill 120, as amended by committee substitute, does pass with favorable expression. Same should on the House floor. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
We do need a title amendment, right? Got a motion on the title amendment. Second. All those in favor of the title amendment, please say aye. Any opposed? We got the title. Next, we'll call House Bill 279. Representative Branscombe, if you and your guest would come to the table, identify yourselves for the record, and then proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. State Representative Josh Branscombe representing the 83rd District And Mr. Chairman, I have some guests with me here today in person and on Zoom if you would like for them to introduce themselves as well.
Please do.
I am Representative Sal Santoro. I sponsored this bill last year. It received COVID, so that's why we are back.
And I'm Chuck Truesdale, Director of Government Relations for the Kentucky Department of Education.
And then, do we have somebody on Zoom as well?
Yes, we do.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jeffrey Earlywine, County Administrator in Boone County, Kentucky, and with me is Jerry Warren, our Chief Building Inspector in Boone County. Thank you.
Please proceed.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we also have a committee substitute and a title amendment as well with this bill. But House Bill 279 is an expanded jurisdiction bill. If this bill, as Representative Santoro mentioned, if it looks familiar, it's because it did pass through the House overwhelmingly. Last year was House Bill 467. But as he mentioned, it did get caught up in the Senate due to COVID. Currently, local governments are responsible for the examination and approval or disapproval of plans and specifications for construction projects up to a specific size, and that's defined in statute. One building category that is currently outside of their review jurisdiction currently is school facilities. And what House Bill 279 will allow local governments to perform plan reviews and inspections and have jurisdiction over enforcement responsibilities for school construction projects where the local government and the Department of Housing and Building Construction, who currently handles those tasks, agree in writing. So they will agree in writing. And the purpose of this bill is to relieve some of the burden that currently exists on housing and building construction and the backlog for state plan review, and allow those local governments, where appropriate, to get those projects moving a little bit quicker. Throughout the process, I've been working closely with the Kentucky Department of Education on the committee substitute bill, and Mr. Chuck Truesdale is here to speak on that.
As you said, we do have a committee substitute. Motion on the sub by Representative Frazier, second by Representative Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor of the sub say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Please proceed, Chuck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll try to be respectful of the committee's time because I know you've got a lot on your plate today. We really appreciate Representative Branscombe working with us to also incorporate the provisions of last year's House Bill 599, which was sponsored by Representative Huff. We're very appreciative of that, which also died a COVID death before it could to get through the process. So the one aspect to the local government review process that is adjusted in the committee sub also streamlines the process when a local government does do that plan review. HBC generally, as a courtesy, forwards on their documentation to the Department of Education so that we're not waiting for that documentation when the local school board sends things to us. This would also make sure that local governments also forward that documentation on to sort of get that process rolling on our end. The other thing is, just as housing, building, and construction has sort of been swamped by budget cuts and loss of personnel over time, so has the Department of Education. So this eliminates some redundant responsibilities that are really no longer useful at the department's level. The first thing is it removes a reference to the Kentucky Efficient School Design Trust Fund, which those of you who have served on A&R will know the statutes are littered with funds that have never actually received any monies, and this is one of them. It just simply eliminates that fund, which has never been used and never received any monies. It also removes an energy report that generally requires about 200 man hours or 200 staff hours each year. For our Kentucky facilities branch staff of 6, that represents obviously a significant use of their time and resources, which could be frankly better spent approving PG documentation from school districts to get that process moving so that when the spring and summer construction seasons begin, they are ready to break ground. And finally, it eliminates references to a water bottle filling station.
Have a motion on the bill.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Frazier, and a second. Representative Thomas. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Bentley?
Yes.
Representative Bray?
Yes.
Representative Brown? Representative Dixon?
Yes.
Representative Donahue?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Fleming? Representative Frazier? Representative Huff?
Yes.
Representative Imes?
Yes.
Representative Johnson?
Yes, but I'd like to hear more about the water bottle filling station after the meeting, please.
Representative Koenig? Yes. Representative Lockett?
Yes.
Representative Marzian?
Yes.
Representative Miller?
Yes.
Representative Reed?
Yes.
Representative Roberts?
Yes.
Representative Thomas?
Aye.
Representative Meredith?
Yes, House Bill 279, as amended by House Committee Substitute, is adopted. We do need a title amendment on this bill.
Motion on the title amendment.
Motion from Representative Reed, second Representative Johnson. All in favor of the title amendment, say aye. Any opposed?
Thank you,
Bill
Mr.
does
Chair.
pass.
Committee, appreciate it, and I appreciate my guests who were on the line but wasn't able to speak, but thank you all.
Representative Brown, if you are still on the Zoom link, you have been muted, so we will need you to take it off mute if you are going to want to record a vote on anything. This time, I am going to turn the chair over to Representative Frazier, my able vice chair, and I'll be coming to the table to present House Bill 513 with some guests.
Chairman Meredith, if you'd like to introduce yourself and your guests, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Representative Michael Meredith of the 19th House District. Also have with me Jerry Wagner of the Kentucky Sheriff's Association and Pat Morgan of the Kenton County Sheriff's Office. This bill is a very, very simple piece of legislation. As you can see, it's only about 6 lines and addresses an issue that has come up through some auditing processes over the last couple of years. Sheriffs get a fee, a percentage-based fee, when they collect taxes for entities in the county and others. Through ordinance, when they were collecting some of these other fees that are not tax fees but fees put on something, they had been advised to have an ordinance with the county agree upon a rate for their collection fees. But in the last couple of years, the auditor's office has said that needs to be codified in statute, not handled in a local ordinance issue. I will turn it over to these gentlemen if they have anything to add.
Okay, we have a motion by Representative Koenig and a second by Representative Reed. Is there anything additional you'd like to add?
Gentlemen, you all have anything you want to add or take the vote?
Okay.
Let's take the vote.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? Okay. Seeing none, please.
Representative Bentley? Yes. Representative Bray?
Yes.
Representative Brown?
Yes.
Representative Dixon?
Yes.
Representative Donahue?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Fleming?
Aye.
Representative Frazier?
Yes.
Representative Huff?
Yes.
Representative Imes?
Yes.
Representative Johnson?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Koenig?
Yes.
Representative Lockett?
Yes.
Representative Marzian?
Yes.
Representative Miller?
Yes.
Representative Reed?
Yes.
Representative Roberts?
Yes.
Representative Thomas?
Aye.
Representative Meredith?
House Bill 513 passes with favorable expressions. Same should on the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
We will now come to our final bill on today's agenda that we'll actually be taking up, House Bill 309. Representative Miller, if you would proceed to the table and introduce any guests that you may have to testify with you. List real quick here.
The only guest I have, sir, is Representative Nemes, who is coming from another meeting. So, but I can start without him. And I do have a sub.
Motion on the committee sub.
Motion on the sub by Representative Reed, a second Representative Fleming. All in favor of the sub, please say aye. Any opposed? The sub is before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. House Bill 309 is one that I believe brings Louisville Metro closer to its true purpose of serving all Louisvillians. I filed House Bill 309 to address concerns expressed by residents throughout our community. It provides transparency, accountability, and oversight of operations of Metro government. This proposal answers the call for subpoenas to allow to be issued by Metro Council's Government Oversight and Audit Committee on behalf of the newly created Citizens Review and Accountability Board. And it requires Metro Council's approval of large legal settlements. This proposal requires more clarity in government expenditures, and more notably, it provides provisions making the Louisville Jefferson County Metro Mayor nonpartisan. House Bill 309 represents the vision of the community and addresses the concerns expressed over the past 20 years, which is the life of merger. So before well, my guest needs no introduction, but before I go to him, what does this bill do? Three main things. It reforms the relationship between the mayor and Louisville Metro Council, strengthening the Metro Council powers. It creates a statutory framework for the Citizens Review and Accountability Board, which is created as a result of the terrible incident with Breonna Taylor a year ago, almost exactly a year ago. Louisville Metro Council passed, as a result of citizen input, Citizens Review and Accountability Board into law, and there were things in it that I realized in late fall that had to go into statute. And then lastly, it improves Louisville Metro government operations. We've gotten input on this bill from a variety of sources. Actually, Section 1, which I will have Representative Nemes explain, part of the language actually came from Senator McGarvey. A lot of it came from the Louisville Metro ordinance that was passed. And as Representative Nemes will explain, we've had a variety of meetings, gotten a variety of inputs from various sources, including the FOP. Several sections, 2, 4, and 6, were the result of input from both Republican and Democrat members of the Louisville Metro Council. Several sections, I use language suggested by the county attorney. That would be in Section 2, 5, and 6. The mayor's office, Section 8, 9, 10, and 11 are the result of mayor's office input. And only Section 3, to my knowledge, is the only section that was favored only by Republicans. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Representative Nemes, because this is for those of you not in Louisville TV market, it may be foreign to you what this is trying to accomplish and what's the purpose of it. So I'm going to turn this over to my Jefferson County colleague and attorney, Representative Nemes.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, thanks for the opportunity to present today. Section 1, what it does is it codifies the existence of the Citizens Review Board in Jefferson County. Louisville, my town, has created a Citizens Review Board because we want people outside the system to be able to look at our department and make sure that there's the proper relationship between our police and our community. That's something that our community has supported. I believe it was a unanimous vote. It was bipartisan, and so we want to be here and we want to support that and put that in state statute. The Citizens Review Board has, as it must, a wonderful and robust opportunity to do investigations, to call in evidence, to make their recommendations for improvement meaningful. As part of that, as a minor part of that maybe, but as an important part of that, we'll call it BRAC, the Citizens Review Board, or CRAB, or however you do it, Citizens Review Accountability Board. I've forgotten the acronym. But the Citizens Review Board should have the ability or access to subpoenas. But subpoenas is an awesome power, and in some ways it's an awful power. It is very intrusive, as it should be in some circumstances, but it ought not be given out to everyone. And for example, in our General Assembly, one committee has subpoena authority. We want to control that power. It's a very important power. So one committee of our own body has subpoena power. What this does is in Louisville Metro Council, they have a committee, the oversight committee, that has subpoena power. And so what this bill does is it recognizes that the Citizens Review Board need access to subpoenas, but we don't want to give it out a lot of places, just like we've decided here that we don't want to give subpoena out to all of our committees even. So we've said if the Citizens Review Board needs information that they can't get by way of open records, by way of FOIA requests, by way of, and that's freedom of information, the federal law, by way of other kinds of avenues or components of the investigation, then they have access to a subpoena by going to the elected body, the Metro Council, that committee that already has subpoena power. They can request documents or they can request witnesses through that committee. So that's the apparatus that we've decided to allow the Citizens Review Board to have access to this really important subpoena power or ability, while not giving it out to a group of people outside the committee, the one committee on the Metro Council. So that's what we've done. Answer any questions about it, but bottom line is our people in Louisville have made the determination, bipartisan determination, I think unanimous, that we need a Citizens Review Board to make recommendations for improvement in our community, much needed recommendations. They have the power to investigate, and part of that power to investigate sometimes is the need to have access to subpoenas, and that's what Section 1 of this bill seeks to accomplish.
The rest of the bill really focuses on balance of power, ensuring that transparency occurs. Section 2 of the bill primarily gives the government oversight and accountability the right to approve by resolution settlement offers over $1 million. In some communities, that's hard to believe, but Louisville Metro Council has no authority. All they have to do is budget for it after those settlements. The bill gives that right to the Government Oversight and Accountability Committee because they have the power to go into closed session, because many of these negotiations need to be confidential. So that's why this power went only to the Government Oversight Committee and not to the full Metro Council. It clarifies for the input, or it clarifies language related to the Ethics Commission, subpoenaing. It allows the GOA to subpoena current or former officers of Metro government. And this became important through the events of last year. Plus, there's another investigation, which is known locally as the Explorer debacle, which there are former officers and that really need to testify. So this will give those the power to do that. Section 3 is where it creates a nonpartisan mayor. It does not change Metro Council, and I'll go into that further. It limits the mayor to 2 terms, as opposed to 3 in 67C today. Section 4 says it clarifies the role of the county attorney relative to ordinances, which is the legislation for the city. The Section 5 relates to amendments from in 2017. The last time we did a major change to 67C, there were some language changes that actually caused some confusion. So we're actually changing those back and clarifying that, and some of that language came from the county attorney. Section 6, it's hard to believe that a government does not have the ability to remove its chief executive officer for cause. Well, Metro Louisville, the way 67C was designed, it is mathematically impossible to remove the mayor for malfeasance. And then Section 7, the Urban Services District, which is the services area of the old city of Louisville, the pre-merger city of Louisville. Although that is its own taxing district, we never see financials for that urban services district. And then Section 8, 9, 10, and 11 were suggested by the mayor's office, and they relate to the ability of the chief to send a designee, because current law has been interpreted to say that the chief has to attend every single disciplinary meeting, and that it just was non-workable last year. It was so time-consuming, and the mayor's office suggested that, and we agreed on that. So why do we want to do a nonpartisan mayor? Over 10% of Jefferson County's residents are not registered as Republican or Democrat. 98% of all Kentucky cities, which is all but 7 Kentucky cities, have nonpartisan elections. As we all know, partisan elections sometimes drive candidates to appeal to the extreme wings of their party, and it makes it harder for a chief executive to govern effectively. As we all know, the judiciary, which is one of the 3 branches of government, is already nonpartisan, and this would make one other entity nonpartisan. And why not make Louisville Metro Council? It's a larger change. It was discussed several years ago. There was not a lot of broad support for it in either party, really. And you have the issue of incumbency, whereas Louisville's mayor is term limited this year, or actually in 22. We have one opportunity to change the mayor's office without having to deal with the incumbent issue, whereas Louisville Metro Council, it's like our Senate, half of them are elected in this even year, and then in 2 years the other half are elected. And Louisville Metro Council districts are compact by law. They are not only contiguous like our districts, but they're compact. So that means the constituents are much more homogeneous with the people they elect. So it's, and as we all know, legislative process is often more partisan than being chief executive should be. And finally, as New York City Mayor, the famous Fiorello LaGuardia said, there is no Democratic or Republican way of clearing the streets. So with that, we will be happy to entertain questions, and I know there are a couple of people signed up to speak against the bill, but we'd be happy to entertain questions now or later, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to go on with the opposition folks,
Okay.
And then we'll do questions at the end. First one, Ms. Holly Hopkins from the Assistant County Attorney in Jefferson County. You could identify yourself and proceed with your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Holly Hopkins with the Jefferson County Attorney's Office. I'm Assistant County Attorney and serve as the Chief of the Legislative Services Division of our office. The Jefferson County Attorney's Office is designated legal representative by statute for all of Metro government. And I am going to focus my comments today primarily on 2 sections of the bill, the Citizens Review Board section and the provision regarding lawsuit settlements. First, with respect to the CRB, I served along with one of my colleagues as legal counsel to the Citizens Review Board work group in Metro Louisville, and then my colleague and I worked with Metro Council to create the ordinance that was enacted, I believe it was in November. All told, that was a 5-month process. Lots of citizen hours and council hours and county attorney hours went into that. Excuse me. The ordinance creates an oversight mechanism composed of 2 parts, both the Office of the Inspector General, which is a full-time paid office with investigatory authority and staff, and then a Citizens Review Board, referred to as the Citizens Review and Accountability Board, that is a volunteer board that would meet monthly and work in conjunction with the full-time Office of the Inspector General. The ordinance envisions that this full-time trained professional office would take the laboring oar for investigations of the oversight body. With respect to this particular bill, the language used muddies some of those relationships a bit. For example, the role of the Inspector General appears to be diminished the way it is written in the bill. And I think that needs to be addressed because of the functionality of the ordinance and because of a full-time trained professional needing to lead the charge on an investigation to ensure it's professionally done. Secondly, the confidentiality of the board and IG discussions needs to be tightened up. The board and the IG need to have the ability to talk about, very frankly, and in a confidential setting, not just cases, but potential cases. The Inspector General, if a complaint is received about a particular officer, needs to get authority to investigate that complaint from the board, and that discussion needs to occur confidentially in order to protect the integrity of the board's investigation, the IG investigation, but also to protect the confidentiality and integrity of any ongoing potential criminal investigation into the same conduct, because those investigations can be occurring simultaneously. So language in the current bill needs to be tightened up to ensure that investigations continue to be confidential. Third, with respect to subpoena power in particular, the work group envisioned more of an independent administrative subpoena power to the Inspector General, similar to what is done in Atlanta at this point. House Bill 309 takes a different approach and puts subpoena authority, ultimate subpoena authority, in GOAC. That's how we refer to the Government Oversight and Audit Committee, and how we'll likely refer to it in shorthand here. The effect of that, though, as written, creates some operational issues that would need to be addressed if the power is going to remain with the committee. First, there needs to be more protection for the confidentiality of proceedings before GOAC. The way the bill is written, the board, we think should be the IG, needs to request a subpoena from GOAC. There's nothing in the measure as it's written now that makes that part of the process confidential, and therefore could lead to public discussion of matters that need to be conducted in private, identifying a particular complaint, identifying a particular subject of a particular investigation. And it's, as I said, certain points of the process, those things need to be protected to protect any ultimate result of an investigation or any ultimate criminal charges that might come out of a separate investigation that might be going on simultaneously. Secondly, GOAC can only act through its votes. So if they vote to issue a subpoena, that vote has to be taken in public, and that needs to be somehow protected, the confidentiality of the underlying investigation and subpoena, and that's not accounted for in the current version. Importantly, though, the way it's structured, the bill has the IG and the board completely shut out of any investigative process that might result from a subpoena being issued. So if GOAC were to agree to issue a subpoena, the way that this is structured, all of that documentary evidence that might be subpoenaed goes to GOAC. If there's testimony that's subpoenaed, that all occurs before GOAC in a closed session. The measure as it's currently written makes no mention of the IG or anyone from the board being able to be present at those sessions, being able to question the witness. And GOAC, understandably, would not have all of the information needed to do an effective examination in a give and take fashion because it's the investigation of the IG in the board. So that's another issue we see with this. Lastly, the way it's written, there is no requirement that any of the evidence gathered in connection with a subpoena be presented to the IG or to the board. So a subpoena could be issued, documents and testimony gathered, and GOAC would have the discretion never to provide that to the body conducting the investigation. So those are some of our concerns with the subpoena portion of the bill. We've shared those with some people. I recognize things were moving quickly and there may not have been time to even fully consider those before today's meeting. So we'd be happy to provide those to others. We've done a markup of the bill and we could share that. With respect to the settlement approval portion, it's a little unclear with exactly what's intended by adding this into 67C, but the effect would be dramatic. The effect would be for Metro to lose its insurance coverage. Metro, like KECO and KLC, have two-step insurance process. There is self-insurance component, and then there's an excess coverage policy, a contract with a third-party insurer. In every situation where insurance is provided by someone else, be it the board of an insurance trust like Metro as a party to, and KLC and KECO, or a private third-party insurance contract, whoever is responsible for having to pay the claim gets to control the claim. If you insert a third party in the settlement approval process, you diminish that control, and you have two situations. With respect to the insurance trust here in Louisville, it's a voluntary cooperation of 4 major entities, 6 smaller suburban cities, who all contribute funds to this. The board is comprised of the 4 major players. They comprise 97% of the funds and the contributions. They make decisions about whether claims get settled and for what amount, because 1, it's their money. And 2, if claims don't get settled, they're on the hook for a judgment. You add in a third party to that discussion and approval process, and those voluntary contributors don't have any incentive to keep putting their money in the pot because they don't have control over how it's spent. With respect to third-party insurers, it's a straight contractual provision. If you want to access benefits under those policies, they control the litigation, they make the decisions about settlement. If a third party, a local governmental body, like a council or a committee or a board, has some sort of approval in that process, coverage is denied, or people would not write coverage for us for excess insurance liability. The other issue with respect to this is timing. As if any of you are lawyers, you know settlement negotiations are an organic and fluid kind of process, and time can be critical. Adding in an extra layer of approval prior to making offers could result in opportunities for settlement being lost to Metro, and more cases winding up having to go to trial. So those are the comments I have on both of those pieces of the bill. Happy to answer any questions the committee might have. My colleague, Mary Ann Watkins, is with us. She's general counsel for the Self-Insurance Trust in Metro and would be better suited to answer any questions you might have on the settlement approval piece of the bill.
All right, next person we've got, I think, is in the room, Mr. Tim Finley. please come forward, introduce yourself for the record, and then proceed.
My name is Tim Findley, Louisville, Kentucky, pastor of the Kingdom Fellowship Christian Life Center, also founder of the Justice and Freedom Coalition. As it's been stated, we feel that the House Bill 309 is a deeply flawed bill. The way that it was crafted, filed, and presented, we would say is suspicious at best. Of the different components to the bill, there are two that I want to take sort of deal with on today. The first is the subpoena power. Members of the Louisville Metro Civilian Review Board work group from 2020 codified that the CRB, an Office of Inspector General process in Louisville, needed to include subpoena power to investigate police conduct and to review broader LMPD policy and training systems. The CRBs must have ample authority to provide a credible service to the communities they serve. Investigative authority through subpoena power gives the ability to interview all witnesses, including LMPD officers, and have access to all documents and other evidence needed to complete a thorough investigation, some of which may not be within the possession of Metro government. Without subpoena power, involved parties cannot be compelled to speak or provide evidence, therefore restricting the CRB's access to critical information and thwarting community-demanded transparency. Subpoena power would undoubtedly best be utilized if directly given to the CRB and the Inspector General. This would ensure it retains its full independence from the executive and legislative branches as desired by the community. The argument put forth by the bill sponsors against giving subpoena power to the CRB is that the CRB is not an elected body. Note that there is precedent within LMG, the Louisville Metro government, for a non-elected body to have subpoena power. If the intent of the current subpoena bill, this language remains directing it to go through a committee or another body, the process must be clearly laid out in statute language. The current language in House Bill 309 is not clear on how exactly this process would work from the beginning, both functionally and administratively. These processes must be clarified in House Bill 309 for it to be considered a viable way to properly equip the Civilian Review Board and the Inspector General with the investigative powers it needs to be a functioning body for the community. While there is a strong preference by our team and the work group that helped create these new entities to place subpoena power with the IG, alternative options are acceptable if it takes a reasonable step forward in allocating a CRB to ultimately get the information it needs for an investigation. If constructed properly, Metro Council's Government Oversight and Audit Committee could be given expanded subpoena powers by the General Assembly if it's capable of gathering the evidence and required to turn over the information to the CRB and the IG to complete its investigation. Proper statutory guidelines must be included to shield the subpoena proceedings from open meetings, open records laws to protect the confidentiality of those involved in the investigation until such times as an investigation are completed and released. The second part, quickly, it deals with the nonpartisan mayoral election. It's clear to us that those who crafted and support certain aspects of this bill do not believe that they can win a Louisville mayoral race without this nonpartisan change. I think it's very odd to have a nonpartisan mayor and a partisan Metro Council. And if it had to see, if that was simply for a political play, we believe that that's shameful. House Bill 309 proposes changing Louisville Metro's mayoral election to nonpartisan. This would be an affront to the democratic process by which Louisville's city-county government was formed through merger as voted on by citizens of Jefferson County. The voters chose during merger a process of partisan elections in which Democrats, Republicans, and independents engage in a competitive policy debate. This proposal to move toward more of a California-style jungle primary is a major departure from that, and it should only be decided by a full vote of Louisville residents. Anything otherwise would be wholly undemocratic and is in a situation where partisan elected legislators in Frankfort are dictating a local electoral process. Here are the political facts. Republicans currently hold a veto-proof supermajority in both the Kentucky House and the Senate. They can pass any bill they so choose. Louisville, the economic engine of the state, has a political party registration that is 57% Democrat, 32% Republican, and 10% Independent. The Kentucky House makeup of the Jefferson County delegation is 74% Democratic and 26% Republican. The Kentucky Senate makeup of the Jefferson County delegation is 60% Democrat, 40% Republican. In the past 75 years, Louisville has elected 11 Democratic mayors and 2 Republican mayors. House Bill 309 is written where only the mayor race would be nonpartisan, i.e. the Metro Council races again would remain partisan. It appears that there is no other government entity across the country where there is a split structure of nonpartisan and partisan elections between the executive and legislative bodies of local government. The unprecedented power grab on the Louisville's mayor office is throwing the rule book out the window in the name of party, not the people. This is a clear partisan attempt to get Republican control in Louisville, where Republican Party ideas have clearly failed to win the votes with Louisville voters for the mayor race. This subversion of democracy should be dropped from HB 309. There is also a racial and equity issue associated with a nonpartisan mayor race. A nonpartisan designation ignores the racial disparities and injustices in our electoral and democratic process and how many voters receive information on who they'd vote for. It would exacerbate those inequities and inequalities. National research shows that nonpartisan municipal elections have a lower voter participation than nonpartisan elections. Party labels provide crucial identifying information by the candidates. By imposing desperate information cost nonpartisan electoral settings reinforce the political importance of the class differences which exist in the ability to process and to structure incoming political cues and information. Taking party labels away in nonpartisan elections increase barriers to information about candidates for voters, exploiting their ability to process incoming political cues and information without party symbol and making the connection between candidate choice and personal interest. This is especially important in local elections, when voters see an election as a choice between their political group and another. They are likely to vote for the candidate representing their group, and current data does support this. 90% of Black Louisvillians identify as Democrats. Removing party labels disenfranchises all voters. The absence of party labels reduces the clarity of choice for voters. A voter who must choose from among a group of candidates whom he or she knows little about will have no meaningful basis in casting a ballot. In the absence of a party ballot, voters will turn to whatever cue is available, which research shows often turns out to be the ethnicity of a candidate's name. Nonpartisanship also tends to produce elected officials more representative of the upper socioeconomic strata than of the general populace and aggravates the class bias in voting turnout, because in true nonpartisan systems, there are no organizations of local party workers to engage in out-the-vote efforts on election day. This part of HB 309 would take our city and entire state backwards on equity in a day and age when advancing toward racial equity should be the goal of all elected officials, Republican, Independent, and Democratic. Thank you.
Do have questions from members of the committee. We're going to start. Representative Marzian, I think you put a question in the chat. I'm going to let you go ahead and just ask that question from your office.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple questions, and the first one, Representative Miller had stated that they had met with many groups, including FOP. What groups did you meet with? You said many groups, and that's not very transparent when you just said many and the FOP. Who are the many?
Well, I took input from many people. I thought I only said we met with FOP in person. Had some Zoom meetings with various people.
With, in the name of transparency, who?
I'll have to get back with you with a list. I've had conference call with the Jefferson County Attorney's Office, had conference calls with a variety of people.
The mayor's office.
Okay.
The mayor's
That's
office.
very transparent.
No, it is transparent. The mayor's office, council, FOP, GLI,
Impetus,
ACLU. You want to name some? We'll talk about them. But we're not holding.
NAACP,
I'm sorry.
NAACP,
I didn't.
No, I don't recall.
May I say something?
Sure.
Urban League.
I was on a Zoom last night with several of the African American city council members who all stated that they've heard from no one regarding this bill.
I've had 4 conversations with Paula McCraney.
And this bill was filed last year, and we've talked to a number of Metro Council members last year as well. So if we're just going to talk about 309, that's one answer. But if we're going to talk about the issue, including the bill that was filed last year, I mean, this is not lack of transparency, and this is not a lack of opportunity for people to be heard. This bill's been filed for talked about for 15 months now. So that's your criticism, I think, is unfounded.
Well, when you get to the podium and say you've talked to many people, it's interesting to know. Also, if only 10% of the residents of Louisville are independent or not registered, why would you have this huge power grab then to say we're going to have we're going to have no partisan election?
In the primary system, we don't have open primaries, so we have there's no way that those 10 or 11% of Louisvillians have any input on who winds up on the ballot in November. This would give them that power.
The primaries then to the independents.
I didn't understand your.
Open the primaries to the independents, but so would anything prohibit the mayoral candidate from announcing their party affiliation and all of their ads and literature?
I don't know of anything that would prevent that.
No, there would not be anything. There would just not be a D or an R next to the name. I also want to mention, because I think this is important, as I think this bill is being misrepresented. Lexington has a nonpartisan mayor. No one's saying that's suppressing the vote. One city out of the 82, we got 82 cities in Jefferson County. Only one is partisan.
2, Shively.
Thank you, Shively and Jefferson and Louisville. We have 416 cities in Kentucky. 7 are partisan. We have Supreme Court justices, 7 of them. Jefferson County has its own. It's nonpartisan. So are yours. So are your cities. There's no allegations that our African American community is disenfranchised because we don't vote for our justices on a partisan label. It's the history of Kentucky that we have our mayors, your mayors, our mayors except for 2 in Jefferson County, are elected on a nonpartisan basis. I have 26 cities I represent, 2 in Oldham County, all of them except for Louisville. Nonpartisan. 10.6% of my district is independent. And the last fact I'll say is this. I was given road plans by the mayor, the last 2 road plans. One of them, I think, had 14 roads. One of them had 10. One of those roads, 24 roads, one of them was outside the Watterson. With all due respect, I think the people of Valley Station and the people of Fern Creek and the people of Middletown and the people of Prospect are entitled to some infrastructure as well. And the best way to make sure that our mayor is coming to Frankfort, like Lexington's mayor does, advocating for the entire county, is to make sure that the mayor has to hunt votes all over the county. If you got to hunt votes all over the county, you're going to represent the entire county. I assume that the primary will produce 2 Democrats, not a Republican and a Democrat, 2 Democrats. I have no beef with that. But I want that Democrat who's going to represent Louisville, going to be our mayor, I want them to hunt votes all around the county because the people in Valley and the people in Fern Creek and the people I represent in Middletown are entitled to our infrastructure needs met as well.
Well, I've been on those roads out there, and they're perfectly fine. And
yeah, I'm going to say, I think the West End are.
You haven't been to the East End too much, have you, Marilyn?
There's sound barriers up all along the Watterson in that area. But my comment is, this is just a huge power grab. When does Louisville want to be like Lexington? I have not heard any of my constituents ask for this bill or say, let's be like Lexington. I have not heard of any big push for this bill. Maybe you have in your Republican circles, but this is non-democratic. It's a power grab from Frankfort. It's what people hate about government. It's not transparent, and that's all I have to say about it right now. And I'll be voting no, obviously.
Representative Koenig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My comments and questions directed to Mr. Finley, and I'm going to start by standing up for my colleagues a little bit. I don't know what is suspicious about this bill. And to start off with that, I respect your opinion. I respect your desire to come and speak. But, you know, this is a bill that was filed last year, is filed again this year. Everything has been out in the daylight. There's nothing suspicious about it. And Representative Nemes stole a lot of my good material. I don't live in Louisville, but from the current voting patterns, it's completely reasonable. There would be 2 Democrats to come out of this election. And I think that's fine. But with that knowledge, was 20 years ago that Rebecca Jackson, one of my favorite people, frankly, was county judge. I believe there's a county clerk that's a Republican currently. So Republicans can win, and things change. You know, Louisville used to be a Republican stronghold. It was a long time ago, but things can and will change. And I'm not voting for this as a power grab for today. As Representative Nemes pointed out, there's most every mayor's race in this state is nonpartisan. In my part of the world, we have, between Kenton, Boone, and Campbell counties, probably 40 cities. All of them are nonpartisan. Works just fine. And I don't think that makes any of them inequitable. And let me just say, I've been on this committee for 15 years. City of Louisville's never been shy about coming to me and saying, hey, we don't like this bill, or we have questions about this bill, or will you vote for this bill? In my 15 years, I've not heard a peep from anybody. And I think I have a good relationship with Mayor Fisher. And he's not been beyond calling me before. I've not heard anything from anyone in Louisville opposing this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Donahue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Koenig, you didn't call me. Let me say this, if I may. Thank you for the pressure. Mr. Finley, I couldn't have said it any better, my friend, okay? I'm going to say a couple things right here. We talked about citizen input, and we talked about balance of power. And what kind of piqued my curiosity when he said, the Representative Miller said, we didn't have the numbers to remove someone in executive, which I'm assuming was the mayor, okay? I go back a long way. I go back to the old Board of Alderman days, and matter of fact, I used to have to make presentations in front of those folks to get things done as well. Then as a city, we decided to go to, consolidate. And the citizens made the decision what we're going to do. Now, you can deflect and do any way you want to go on this situation, but this is strictly about trying to get control of the mayors, is what it is. There's been a long-running issues with the Metro Council and the mayor's office, whomever may be in there. We have a system that works, okay, and there are Republicans get elected just like Democrats do as well, too. But this thing right now, talking about the mayor's race, and this is the one thing I'm talking about, because the bottom line is this, is that we know who's going to be running. Won't mention those names. There's names are out there, and what it does, it improves the odds. It improves the odds for that. And I'm all about the little man and the middle man. I'm a capitalist. I want my money to make money as well as anybody else does. But let's just call it what it is. This is what this is, and it's a shame that it has to come to Frankfort down here to change this, because let's have the citizen input. If they want to do it, then let the citizens make that decision. But we shouldn't make that decision, in my personal opinion. In that situation. So it's unfortunate. There are a lot of loopholes in this bill, which I'm not going to get into. I just want to talk about this briefly. Gentlemen, I respect everybody at that table, but let's call it what it is. And it's unfortunate because no one has any guarantee in life, and it's almost like we're trying to skew what we do here. And when you talk to people, no one called me and said, hey, would you like to be a part of this committee? We're going to do this bill. I'm just a legislator. I heard this from a fellow legislator sitting right down there yesterday. Nobody called me. So I'll use that same phrase. Nobody talked to me about it at all. So if you want to try to move things forward, you want to be positive and productive in a community, then you should be inclusive of all people involved. That's what you should do, in my personal opinion. But once again, I've said it, it's no secret. I don't know why we bring things from Louisville down there to Frankfort to try to fix what we consider problems in there. But instead of us collectively getting together, and one of my favorite phrases, we're like a spoke, we're east, west, north, south in the city of Louisville. And if we all work collectively together in collaboration, then we get some things done. This is not a good bill, in my personal opinion. I won't be supporting it. And if it's something you want to try and change in the future, what I would suggest is that you be inclusive of everyone that's in this, bring all folks to the table, and let's try to make decisions as we move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
May I say something, Mr. Chairman? I wanted to address Mr. Koenig. I know he had said something. The reason why I used the language suspicious was for the very reason that I opened up my remarks with. I know that the nonpartisan mayoral race is not anything new. But as I said in the remarks, it is something different. I believe that one of our city council folks called it an experiment. There's not a lot of nonpartisan mayors and partisan city councils. That's the issue. So I don't think the nonpartisan mayoral race is obviously that's not strange. But the way that this is written, we would be one of the only places in the country like this. That's suspicious.
Representative Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to remind folks, this is way before our time, but this General Assembly created 67C and created the merged government to function as is. And at that time, it was flawed in its process because if you keenly remember that it was going down the pipe that this is going to be nonpartisan on both mayor as well as the council. It will be nonpartisan, but at the last moment, it was shifted to be partisan races, which I wish that was still the case, that both levels of government, both levels of elected officials, the mayor and the council, should be nonpartisan. I've always believed that, and I always try to push for that. I think down the road, we need to go down that path. So when it comes to let the citizens, but the General Assembly has a power to do and to frame things to help Louisville become in a better position as where we are now. As far as as far as where we need to go and what we're trying to do, this partisan race, it's not partisan. We're trying to get a better opportunity for everybody to participate. And I think the comment that the likelihood of having two Democrats to be run against each other in the general election, I think it's a high probability. So when it comes to trying to put things forward, I even try to push, and I talked with the sponsor about having a separate bill that would create an inspector general as a nonpartisan elected position to do this. But given the process we're going through, we're going through that process, and so I backed off. But I still think it's probably worthy to go down that process, to have a conversation, to have an elected official, nonpartisan, outside of these two groups. Because I'm telling you, I have seen it being a Metro Council member. There is dynamics that some people understand that goes on between the Metro Council to the county attorney's office and with on the mayor's office. And it's got to be resolved to give more flexibility in terms of a balanced government. So, I mean, obviously, I'll be supporting this bill because I think it's a step forward in a better direction to help improve Louisville, get Louisville in a better position. Because there's a lot of things that are going on with Louisville, and I apologize for my members outside of Louisville to go through this process. I know y'all have, I guess, a view of Louisville, but we need as much help as possible from our colleagues out in the state to help Louisville becoming in a better, stronger position than where we are now.
Motion on House Bill 309 as amended by the committee sub.
Got a motion on the bill, Representative Reed. A second, Representative Johnson. Was it you? I thought I heard you. We do have one more question. Representative Brown, I think, has a question on the Zoom link. Go ahead, Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. as I look at this, I don't see the correlation. Well, there are three things. Reverend Finley, thank you for the good job that you did in explaining and your comments. You took away most of the things that I wanted to say and ask about. I'm a former Lexington Fayette Urban County Government Council member. And in 1972, and starting in 1974, Lexington became the first merged government in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And it was decided then that it would be, the mayor would be nonpartisan and the council would be nonpartisan, and that has worked for us. I don't understand and don't see the reason for separating the mayor out and making him nonpartisan and the council members partisan. I just don't understand that. The second thing is, it seems like there's a problem and there's a concern about the Citizens Review Board and the subpoena power. And I think that the incidents of a year ago with Breonna Taylor and that have led us to this point call for there to be transparency and oversight about police departments all across the state. And the third thing that comes to me is that I think that Frankfort, the Commonwealth of Kentucky, is being heavy-handed in its approach to Louisville Metro government, in that the citizens voted to make it partisan, the mayor and the council to be partisan. I think it would be presumptuous of us and heavy-handed of us as a body to step in and say that it is our responsibility. It is what we want to do as a General Assembly to put on the citizens of Jefferson County to say that, well, the mayor should be nonpartisan and the council remain partisan. I don't understand it, and I'm going to be voting no on this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I have a motion and a second on the bill. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Bentley?
May I explain my vote, Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Representative.
I'm going to be voting yes to move it out of committee because I think the council would move them in a better situation. I've been here 5 years, and it seems like my job has been to micromanage Louisville when I'm from Eastern Kentucky, where I got adult obesity, I got youth obesity, I got heart disease problems, I got adult smoking, I got 18,000 people out of electric, and I wish we could solve all Louisville's problems in one day, but I know we can't. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Bray?
Yes.
Representative Brown?
No.
Representative Dixon?
Yes.
Representative Donahue?
No, ma'am.
Representative Fleming? Yes. Representative Frazier?
Yes.
Representative Huff?
Yes.
Representative Imes?
Yes.
Representative Johnson?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Koenig?
Yes.
Representative Lockett?
Yes.
Representative Marzin?
I'd like to explain my vote, and we need to call this what it is and not hide behind all this highfalutin language. This is a huge power grab by the majority party to try to take control of Louisville, and I vote no.
Representative Miller?
Yes.
Representative Reed?
Yes.
Representative Roberts?
No, and explain my vote.
Go ahead.
Thank you. As Representative Koenig said, yes, most of the mayors in my district are nonpartisan. To the best of my knowledge, that's not because it was mandated by Frankfort how we run our city elections. I think the people in my district would take great offense if we were told that our mayor had to be nonpartisan and our council had to be partisan. We'd be very confused by that. Since Representative Miller mentioned meeting with the ACLU, and we have this handout here from the ACLU, and I've kind of been struggling for the words I wanted to use to define how I really feel about this bill. Reverend Finley, I too am very suspicious. I think that is the right word. But the ACLU here said, because there are good parts of this bill, but it's two bills smashed together that have no business being together. And their statement was, these Louisvillians should be entitled to such policies, and they should not be delivered in a political Trojan horse. And that's what this bill is, so I vote no.
Representative Thomas?
Aye.
Representative Meredith?
Yes. House Bill 309 is amended by the committee substitute, does pass with favorable expression. Same should on the House floor. Don't need a title amendment. Okay. Thank you all very much.
Reverend?
Seeing no other.
I didn't get a chance to say that.
Representative Brown, do you need to record votes on those earlier bills?
No, I'm going to pass. I wasn't able to get involved and hear what would happen with those bills, so I'm going to pass on those.
All right. Next Wednesday, we will have the joint committee meeting with the Senate, State, and Local Committee on the CDBG hearing. It'll be in room 131, and then we'll leave that meeting and come into this room to have our regularly scheduled meeting if we have business to go before us. Seeing no other business, this meeting is adjourned.